Today's daf, Basra Hashem, is Masechta Bava Daf Tes. We're going to begin from daf Ches Amid Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom, Toner Rabbanan. So here we go. Okay. We're discussing over here the halachas of a gabbai tzedakah, and we said before that to collect tzedakah from the people, you need to have two people in charge. So Toner Rabbanan. And here the Bryce is discussing how they have the gabbai tzedakah, the one in charge of the tzedakah, the secretary, has to be above board. Tan Rabbanim, rabbis taught, Gaboy tzedakah, the collectors of tzedakah, Einu Rishon Lifrei Zeh Mizeh. They're not allowed to separate from each other. In other words, we're two people in charge, but maybe one will go on this part of the city to collect, and the other is going to go on the other part of the city to collect. No, they have to be together at all times, but not so close together. One could be at the gate of the city, and one could be in the marketplace of the city. But you have to be able to see that they're near each other, as Rashi says. They both have to be really next to each other, so people understand that there's really two people in charge. Now the Brisa continues. Let's say Gabbai Tzedakah finds money in the street, so really he's allowed to keep it, because the money, if you find in the street, it's free. It has no siman on it, so there's no mitzvah about Shabbos Aveda. You should not put it in his pocket. He should really put it in the pushka of the tzedakah and put it aside. When he comes to his house, he should take it. He should take it for himself. In other words, out of the sight, out of people. Because if people see him put money in his pocket, they're going to say that the Gabbai Tzedakah is keeping all the money he's collecting for tzedakah. A similar idea. Let's say the Gabbai Tzedakah lent money to somebody, and the guy who he lent money to wants to pay him in the street. So he shouldn't take that money and put it into his wallet. He's collecting his own money that he lent to somebody else. No, he shouldn't put it in his wallet. When he should put it into the pushka, and when he comes to his house, he should take it out. That's his money, because people, when they see that he's collecting money, people think, oh, the guy is giving him tzedakah and he's keeping it. So therefore, to be above board, that's why he should do it this way. Make fake that he's putting it into the pushka, and when he comes home, he can take it back for himself. Tarabanam. Gaboy tzedakah she'en lehem aniyim lechalik, partin lacherim ve'im partin la'atzma. If the Gabbai tzedakah, he's dealing with small change, and he has no poor people to give it to, so then to exchange it into a larger denomination, he should have somebody else do it, not for himself to do it. The reason why they change it into a higher denomination is because to keep it as copper, the money can become rubbed out or something like that. So that's the mitzvah of by a Gabbai tzedakah. That's why that he has to be, but he's not the one should do the exchange, because there's a fee in charge, and people will start accusing him of making money off tzedakah. Gabbai Tamchoy, the guy who collects the charity plate with food on it. He has no poor people to give out the food. So he can sell the extra food to other people, but he cannot sell it to himself. Money of tzedakah you shouldn't count it by twos, only one by one. Because again, people who are watching you counting it, people will say he's taking two. He's taking two, but he's really only counting one. So the Gemara, Amar Abaya says, "Mereish loy have Yosef mar atzipa de beit knishta." I would never sit on the mats in the base knesses, because really these were monies collected for tzedakah. And they decided, since they had no money, no poor people to give it to, they decided to buy mats for the base of Knesset. And Abaye thought that was wrong. It was the money originally was given to give to poor people, not to buy mats in this base of Knesset. Even the Shambhala Haditanya. But then Rabbi said, I learned the following brisa: that you're allowed to exchange it, to change it up. If you have no people to give it to, you're allowed to change it to whoever you want to give it to. Have Yosef, I would sit on the mats of the basic Knesset. Again, Amar Abaya says, Amareish have Yovid Mar Tre Kisa, Chad Laniyad Alma, Chad Laniyad Masa. in the beginning, I would my master, which probably was Rabbah, had two cups, one to collect for the poor people of not related to the city, the outside world. V'chan, one cup was to collect laniya demasa for the people, the poor people of the city. So he had two pushkas. Even the shama lahodo la'omale Shmuel Rav Tachlifa bar Avdima, when he heard the following statement that Shmuel said to Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi, that what? That you can change it which way you want. In other words, even if you collect it for aniyah of the city, you could give it to aniyah of the outside world, or vice versa, because really it's hard to collect to know exactly how much you're going to need. So you're allowed to change the usage of that money. Avad Chadkis, I made just one pushka. Allah, and I made a condition. I made a condition with the tziba to be able to distribute it whichever way I see fit. So Shmuel told it to Rav Shmuel Tachlifa bar Avdima, and I'm doing the same thing. I made one cup, and I can decide, and the tzibur understands that I can decide who I want to give it to. That's what Abaye said. Probably he was referring to Rabbah, who did that. Rav Ashi Amar Rav Afni says that's right. Rav Ashi goes one step further. I don't have to make it in a legal document to make this condition. Everybody knows the ka'asi adaiti didi asi. Everybody who's giving me money, they're trusting my judgment. Well, my debeina yahavina lay, and whenever I decide to give the money to, that's what I can give the money to. So it's very understood that I can decide who to give the money to, and I don't have to have a stipulated conditions, posted that I can decide, because it's understood. I'm the Rav Ashi. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is discussing about instituting fines. Hani tabachi, they were butchers. They made a understanding with each other, a condition. The whole man, that means one butcher works one day, one butcher works the other day, to give everybody a chance to make a profit. The whole man, that if somebody would decide to work on the day of his friend, then they will destroy the skin of the animal. In other words, the skins of the animals that he had, they would go into his shop and rip up the skins or take it to confiscate it, because that's a fine, a penalty, because you're working on the day that you're not supposed to work. So exactly what happened. One of them went. He worked on the day that he wasn't supposed to, that his friend had that day, and he's working on the day. So kari lamashche. So then they ripped up the hides of his kari lamashke. They ripped up the hides of his store, of the meat that he had in the store, of the animal that he had in the store. Also, the Kami to Rava that came before Rava, Chayvina Rava l'shalome. Rava required them, held all the other butchers liable to pay the guy back. Because Rava said this is an illegal penalty, because Rava held that only the rabbi of the city can impose fines, and not anybody else. You can't make up amongst yourself to impose a self-imposed fine on someone. Isn't part of the rules of the city that they could impose fine. Rava did not answer that. True that Rava didn't want to answer that, because basically Rava would have to admit that was only said on the most important person in the city. He can impose fines, but not everybody can make up their own fines. Imagine everybody makes up a fine that if you block my driveway, I can fine you $500. You can't make that. You can't make up your own fines. It has to be the most important chush of a person of the city. He's the only one that can make up the fines. Amra Papa said, Shaper Ovid, delay Adele, Midi. It's very good that Rava did not answer anything, because this was only said when there is no important person. When there's an important person in the city, then we give him the right to impose fines on people. And since this was a private conditions amongst butchers to penalize each other, Rava held that that was an invalid penalty, and therefore he required the people of the butchers to make whole the butcher that they penalized. Tanu Rabbanan. Ein mechashin mitzdaka im gabe tzedakah. We don't ask the gabe tzedakah to give a calculation where they give the money to. Behegdish im gives baram, and not Hegdish, who is collecting the treasuries of the base of Megdish, because it's too difficult, because they're giving a lot of little monies all around for this, that, and that, and it's very hard for them to also be a bookkeeper. This is sort of mentioned in Melachim Beish. The Melachim Beish says that we trusted the people who are in charge of the collection of the base of Mikdash, and we didn't ask them to make a calculation because we trusted them what they were doing. So same idea. If a Gabi Tzedakah has to give out all sorts of little monies all around, then we trust that they're doing the right thing, and we don't ask them to give a whole bookkeeping exactly where the money went. Omar Rab Laza said, even if you have a good treasurer in your house, you should try to count the money, bind the money, and count it. They bound the money and they counted it. In other words, if you're dealing with people you're giving money to, you should always count it, even if it takes up time to count it, and et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to be in a position where you're accusing somebody else of stealing your money. So it's a good idea to always count your money wherever possible. Now the Gemara goes on discussing who do you give money to? Who do you give money to? If a poor person comes, Amar Rav Huna, do you have to verify that he's telling the truth? Rav Huna said, if he asks you for food, you check if he's worthy of it, but you don't ask him if he's coming with tattered clothing and he's asking you, please buy me a suit. Then you don't have to check if he's faking you out. So that's what he says. So that's Rav Huna's opinion. So Iba Yisem as Krab, Iba Yisem as Svara. Iba Yisem as Svara. Rav Huna says this is a logical thing. When he comes with you without clothing, he's wearing tattered clothing. So certainly you should buy him clothing. But if he claims that he's hungry, how do you know? Maybe he just had a meal. Maybe he has an account with a grocery store that he can take whatever he wants. So therefore, before you give him money, you have to investigate if he's telling you the truth. But there's also a pasuk that says the same idea. It says with a shin. Paroish means to try to get the explanation or try to investigate the matter, and then if someone, for a person who's hungry, you have to investigate that he's telling the truth, and then you give him. But there's a pasuk that says when someone who comes to you for clothing, if you see somebody without clothing, you should give him clothing. As soon as you see him without clothing, you can give him the money. So again, Rav Huna said that if someone comes to you claiming he has no food, you have to check to see if he's telling you the truth. But if he claims that he has no clothing, then you don't have to investigate further. You can give him money for the clothing. Rabbi Yehuda says just the opposite. If he claims he has no clothing, you have to investigate if he's telling you the truth, but not when it comes to food. If you want, I can tell you that it's logical. When he has no food, he's definitely maybe hungry right now, and therefore you have to give him right away, because if you're going to waste time till you find out if you're telling the truth, he's going to be in pain because he didn't eat. But just wearing a bad clothing, he's not in pain, so therefore there's time to investigate to that he's telling you the truth. There's a pasuk that says it. Price means, take a piece off your bread and give it to him right away. Instead of when you see it, he darshans the pasuk when it seems to you that he's telling you the truth, then you have to provide him with clothing. So Tanya Kavose, the Rabbi Yehuda, this is a brisa that supports the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Alma Kasuni, if he says that Kasuni, give me clothing, we check to see if you're telling the truth. We say, not so fast. Before we write the check, let me make a few phone calls to see if we are telling the truth. Parnisuni, but if he says, give me food, we don't check, we right away give him the money. New Gemara. Tanan Hasan, we learned. Ein poichsin la'ani ha'oive l'memakam l'makam mikika b'punyan. That means we don't give a poor person that's passing through the city, if you're giving him food, you have to give him money that he can buy a loaf of bread that costs a pudyan. And me'arben sa'in b'sela, when 4 sa'in is in a seller, so that's a certain size of a bread that he can buy. At that time, that will give him like a food for at least 2 meals. Lon, if he says he wants to sleep over in the city, then we have to give him parnosas lina support and that he can sleep in the city. Again, this is a poor person that's on the road, and then he says he's sleeping here overnight. So my parnosas lina, what is considered that you have to provide him? Amar Papa Puria, a bed, Ubei Sadia, and I guess sheets or something of the Ubei Sadia is a pillow to put in his head. So no, we don't expect him to sleep without a pillow. So that's what you have to provide him. Shabbos, if he's staying on Shabbos, nice and loy mods and shalashudas, then we give him the food on 3 meals. As Tosfos explains, means that he came to us on Shabbos after he ate the lunch, or after he had the kiddush in the shul or whatever. So you have to give him 3 meals. One for shalosh shudas. You have to give him also a meal for malava malka, and then 1 meal that you provide for him so that he'll have extra food to go on the road when he continues his journey on Sunday. Tana, we learned in the Brayse, if he's a type of poor person that has no problem knocking on doors, then we don't have to provide him up front all those meals, because he's a type of poor person that has no shame, not shame, but no feeling bad about himself that he's knocking on doors. So then we don't have to provide him all food up front, because he's able to take care of himself. Ahu Anya, there was this person, that there was the poor person that came to Rav Papa, but he was a type of poor person that can knock on doors. Loy mizdakek, so Rav Papa didn't give him, because Rav Papa said to himself, even though Rav Papa was rich, he said to himself, if I don't give him, somebody else will give him, and he has no problem. He's not a person that's very shy, that he's not going to stop knocking on doors. So he'll be able to fend for himself. So I don't have to provide. Amalei Rav Sama Braid Rav Yevel Rav Papa. So Rav Sama said to Rav Papa, if you're not going to give him any money, here's the problem. If you, Rav Papa, are not going to give him anything, then other people in the city are not going to give him anything. Tanya, Tanya, we learned in the Brayse, so he told him, but didn't the Brayse say that if he's a type of person that can go on doors, you don't have to give him, because if he doesn't get by you, he'll get by somebody else. On Malay, so Rav Sama told Rav Papa, you have to give him something, but you don't have to give him a large amount, but you can give him a little something. So in other words, Rav Sama told Rav Papa, listen, if you're going to just give him absolutely nothing, people are going to follow your lead and not give him anything. So therefore, I think you should give him a tiny bit. You don't have to give him food for 3 meals, but give him a little bit so other people will follow. And he's the type of person that has no problem knocking on doors, so he'll be able to fend for himself. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabasi says, what is the amount of tzedakah that you're supposed to give for a year? There's a mitzvah of tzedakah, and the mitzvah applies once a year at least. So Rabasi says, at least to give 1/3 of a shekel per year for tzedakah. So at least 1/3 of a shekel should be given to tzedakah. For tzedakah, even if, let's say, there's no poor people around, you have to find a way to do the mitzvah of giving 1/3 of a shekel for tzedakah. The Amar Rabasi says, like shkula tzedakah kenega kol mitzvahs. The tzedakah is equivalent, corresponds to every mitzvah, and that's a big thing. Shenema is like the mitzvah of tzitzis. He says corresponds to all the mitzvahs. it has a piece of every mitzvah in the Torah in the mitzvah of tzedakah. Shnema, v'mano mitzvahs, mitzvah enksiv el mitzvahs. He uses the same pasuk that discusses charity, and it calls it mitzvahs, many mitzvahs. So all the mitzvahs somehow are related to the mitzvah of tzedakah. Rab Lazar says, "Godol hamaase yosim and oise." If you're a collector and you have to go through the embarrassment of collecting money for poor people, you're forcing other people to give tzedakah. You're greater than the person who gives the tzedakah himself, because it's easy to write a check. It's kind of hard to go to people to collect on behalf of others. Shnema v'hoya maaseh tzedakah shalom v'avodas tzedakah hashke v'vetech ad olam. So ma'aseh means you forcing others to give tzedakah is greater than the one that gives tzedakah himself. Zocha haloi parish rav l'rachmecha. So here the Gemara says a person is going to give tzedakah. Hashem says that the amount of money that you're going to have for the year is destined. But if you have a luck, then somebody came to you to collect the tzedakah, so then you gave your money to tzedakah and you did a mitzvah at the same time. But if you don't have the merit that somebody comes to you to tzedakah and tries to convince you to give more tzedakah, and so you didn't have that merit, then vaniyim rudin tavibayis. So you're going to get taxed by the Rashi says the Mamshelis Romi that's always screaming, give us money. They're going to come to you for collecting for tzedakah, because anyway they're going to the Romans say, oh, we need more money to give out to the migrants or to poor people who really don't really need it, but they're going to come collect it to you in the form of taxes. So therefore, be lucky enough that you're able to give away the money to tzedakah and acquire a mitzvah at the same time. Amalei Rava lebnei Bechuza. Rava said to bnei Bechuza, I beg you, ushi bahadei adadi. Give tzedakah one to another. In other words, collect from each other. Make sure that everybody's giving the right amount of tzedakah based on their financial status. So there'll be peace in the government, because when there's no peace in the government, then the government is going to come collecting the extra deficit that they have from the Jews. So therefore, Bnei Mechuzah were very rich people, and Rava advised them, listen, give tzedakah as much as you can afford, and according to your financial status, because if that way, the government is not going to impose extra fines and taxes upon the Jewish people. V'amar Rab Lazar says, when the Beis HaMikdash was around, a person would give a shekel to the Beis HaMikdash and was able to atone for his sins. But now that we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, if you're going to do tzedakah charity, that's good. Then the goyim are going to come and take it with power. It became those that even if you were forced to give the tzedakah, it's considered to be tzedakah. I guess if you give if you give to the government and the government is distributing it to maybe goyim who are poor and giving them free education, free medical, and free this, free that, it's God considers it tzedakah for you, but it was forced tzedakah. So might as well give it on your own, and by doing so, by giving it willingly, you'll automatically atone for your sins. Rava said, Hi Milsa Ishtayle Ula. I heard this from this young person. Ula is another name for Rav Sheshis, and that his mother really was a person. The mother of Rav Sheshis was somebody who shamed herself, and as we're going to see in the story in a moment, this mother of Rav Sheshis shamed herself. So that's why Rava says, I heard these words, the following from Ula we go to Amabeis, Mishagesh Urches De'ime, that his mother went nuts to make a point. Mishmei Rab Lazar. So Rava heard this in the name of Rav Sheshis, who said it in the name of Rab Lazar. My diksiv, what does the pasuk say? You wear tzedakah like an armor. Every little piece, little piece of it adds up to a big armor. Av tzedakah, also tzedakah, don't think you have to give the big check. Kol pruta mitzterefes lecheshbon gadol. Every penny that you give combines itself to a big calculation, which means it provides, God adds it all up and it becomes protective coat over you. Rab Chanina Mahacha Beged Idim Kol Kasenu Ma Beged. Tzedakah is like a piece of clothing, an item of clothing. Kol Nima V'Nima Mitzrefes LeBeged Gadol. Every thread in a item of clothing combines itself to become a large coat. Tzedakah, so also tzedakah, kol pruta mitzrefes l'cheshbon gadol. Every penny combines itself to a big cheshbon, a big accounting. So now the Gemara opens up a parenthesis, and we'll put this into parentheses over here, and over here ends the parentheses. Basically, we want to know the story of why Rav Sheshis was called, that his mother went a little bit crazy, or shamed herself. Why is the mother? Why is Rav Sheshis called the young one whose mother went a little bananas? So the boy minei Rav Achtavoy bar Ami Rav Sheshis. Rav Achtavoy asked Rav Sheshis, how do you know Mitzorah that after he brought the birds could also be metame a person? So Mitzorah has two parts to his tahara. One, he brings one, as the Torah describes, with the birds, and then he waits 7 days, and then he brings his karbonis. So during that period that he's counting to be tahar, he's still tame enough to make an adam tame. So back and forth over here, I'm going to go very quickly, but basically that was the question he asked Rav Sheshis. So Rav Sheshis said, "Omalei hoil mitame begadim mitame adam." Since we know that he could be to make clothing tame, so he can make a person tame. So this is what Rav Sheshis told Rav Achtavoy. Amalei dilma. So Rav Achtavoy didn't like that teretz. Amalei dilma tumu b'chibur mishani to esten nebelim mitame begadim ein mitame adam. Achtavoy says, but we find other places where if by nevela you could be mitame begadim and you're not mitame a person. Amalei sheretz mitame adam in olam lamashum mitame begadim. So Rav Sheshis says, but isn't a sheretz defiles a person? So also. How do we know that? Because it's mitama begadim. Amalei. So Rav Achtavoy says sheretz behedik sibei ish asher yiga b'chol sheretz. Ela shik v'zera mitama adam enola lamashum dahoy mitama begadim mitama adam. Shik v'zera semen is mitama a person. How do you know that? Because it can be mitama begadim, so therefore it can be mitama adam. Amalei. So Rav Achtavoy did not like that teretz. Shik v'zera nami behedik siv ish. So basically, he was Rav Achtavoy was making fun of, he was challenging him. Basically, there was a discussion in halacha, and Rav Achtavoy was treating Rav Sheshis very lightly, because every time Rav Sheshis brought a proof, Rav Achtavoy, volleyed it back and showed Rav Sheshis that he's wrong. Chalish dati to Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis got very insulted and he felt very bad. Ishtik, so the Gemara says, because of that, Ishtik Rav Achtavoy bar Ami v'siaket Talmudai. He became mute, lo yaleinu, and he forgot all his learning. So the mother of Sheshis came, and he cried in front of her son to cry. She cried that maybe she felt bad for Rav Achtavoy. So the mother of Sheshis pleaded on Rav Achtavoy's behalf to heal Rav Achtavoy. Don't be come out of it. Don't have any hakpada against Rav Achtavoy. And Rav Shesha didn't want to listen to his mother. Amrlei, so she said, the mother of Shesha said, Chazu lahani chadi dematzis minei. It's hard to say this, but she showed Rav Shesha, look at the chest that you were nursing from. I'm your mother. Please listen to me. So Rav Shesha felt, turned and emotional because of what his mother did. So the Gemara says, Boya Rachme Elai. So Rav Shesha started to pray. V'itasei Rav Achatavoy was healed. He probably started to speak again and started to slowly remember his learning. And then the Gemara says, the Gemara concludes, the Aseh Allah Minalam, the Tanya Rav Shimon ben Chai Omer. The Gemara just concludes. How do you know? The Gemara wants to know what is even though Rav Achatavoy valued Rav Sheshes and refuted any proof that Rav Sheshes said that a Mitzvah b'Meisi Foiroi is Metama Adam, but really, where do we know it from? So the Gemara says we know it because there's a Gzera Shava. It says wash your clothing during the Yemei Safari, right? And it says wash your clothing when he was a real Mitzayra. Just like when he's a real Mitzayra, of course, he's Metama Adam. So also, even when he's counting, he started the Tahara process, but didn't complete it yet, he's still Metama Adam. So this was just an open parentheses to show that Rav Sheshes sometimes is called the one whose mother went embarrassed herself in front of him. But the point over here is Rav Sheshes was the one who said in the name of Rab Laza regarding the mitzvah of tzedakah that every penny counts and God combines it up so that it will be a protective coat for you. So the Gemara continues. Amar Rab Laza said, "Kol ha'isa gadol ha'isa tzedakah b'seisa yosem Moshe Rabbeinu." Whoever gives tzedakah privately has enough in him to be able to, he has enough power of tefillah in him to even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the greatest tzaddik regarding tefillah that we know of is Moshe Rabbeinu. As you can see in this week's Parsha Kairach, he's always praying on behalf of the Jewish people, and God is always listening and taking away the severe punishment. But somebody who gives tzedakah privately that nobody knows about, he's greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm afraid because of the wrath of God. Whoever gives tzedakah privately that nobody knows about, God covers up his rage. So upligi the Rabbi Yitzchak, and this Rabbi Laza argued against Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Af koifa chaim eine koifa." He can protect the anger of God, but the rage of God will not be protected. Shenema v'shoicha b'kei chama eza. Even though you gave, so to speak, a bribe to God, God still holds on to his rage. I don't know what the difference between af and chema is exactly, but Rabbi Lazar was the one that said that if you give tzedakah privately, your tefillahs are so powerful that you can actually, if God made a bad gezerah against you, you can nullify that gezerah, even if it's an anger gezerah or rage gezerah. But Rabbi Yitzchak said not so fast. You could nullify the anger of the gezerah of the edict, but not the rage of the edict. Iki the Amre, others say that that's not what Rabbi Yitzchak was talking about. Tzedakah, if you give tzedakah privately, your tefillahs are very powerful. But Rabbi Yitzchak was talking about something else. Called dayin shenoit l'shoichet, maybe chama azar la'olam, shenema v'shekah b'cheik. If whoever a judge who takes bribery, he brings a tremendous rage to the world, not to himself, not to other Jews, but to the entire universe, because taking a bribe destroys the creation of God. So okay, so we'll leave it at that. That if someone who's accustomed to give tzedakah privately that nobody knows about, he has a very powerful part in him that when he can give a bracha, he can pray, and Hashem will nullify any bad decree. We'll just do another 2 minutes. Rabbi Yitzchak said, if you give a poor person money, you get 6 blessings. If you comfort him with words, then you give 11 brachas. So if you give words of encouragement, you get even more brachas, because sometimes it's not just the check. The ani, the poor person, needs a chizik also. You look over there, the pasuk discusses giving bread to the poor, and you get 6 blessings. If you give him words of encouragement along with the check, you get 11 blessings. And there, that probably means that you're giving him also words of encouragement. V'zarach b'choshech archa b'afei loscha b'atzarayim v'nechach Hashem tomis bi v'tzach tzoches nafshecha uvonu mimcha cherves oilam moisli dar v'dar tekaimim. So there is a calculation over there that proves that if you appease him with words of encouragement, that you were once down and out, and you have to be mechazek yourself, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will open up and help you. So then you will be blessed you'll be blessed also with 11 brachas. Rabbi Yitzchak said, why does the pasuk say, "Right at tzedakah v'chesed yim tzachayim tzedakah v'chavay"? The right of tzedakah yim tzedakah. It's pasuk implies if you're chasing after tzedakah, you'll find tzedakah. Well, who wants to be? If you're chasing for tzedakah, do you want to be on the recipient to be the one that's going to receive tzedakah? This teaches you a following concept: if you're chasing after tzedakah, somehow you'll find Hashem will give you money to give more opportunities to give tzedakah. So it's like the mitzvah leads to be able to give. You'll have money to give even more tzedakah, and that's the truth. Even chas v'shalom, when someone faces a financial loss, he should push himself to give tzedakah, and then somehow things will straighten out, and you'll find more money to be able to give tzedakah. And this is the sugya. Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu mamsloi bnei Odom hamuhuganim lasalim tzedakah. Nachman bar Yitzchak says, if you chase tzedakah, Hakadosh Baruch Hu will give you the appropriate person to give tzedakah, because sometimes if you give tzedakah and it's not the appropriate person, you don't get the same kind of reward. Rabba said, "My diksiv, Yirmiyahu was cursing Klal Yisrael, and he was saying that the Jews are so sinful that God, please, even though they're charitable people, make sure that they don't give tzedakah to the right person." Even at the time the Jews overcome their Yetzer Hara, and they want to give charity before you, make them stumble to give the tzedakah to not appropriate people, they shouldn't get any reward. So we see a midah tova that if a person is chasing after tzedakah, he wants to give tzedakah, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him more money to give tzedakah, and not only more money to give to tzedakah, but more importantly, to give to the right person who are in need of tzedakah. So we'll continue this sugya of Hashem tomorrow.